economic player in Europe is taking its responsibility in starting this type of dialogues. Antwerp has been a port that put a lot of attention towards its role as community builder. Obviously, we are a big port, and that means we are a landlord, we are a regulator, we are even an operator for some services, but we mainly want to be a community builder. We want to look for visions and views and work together with partners to build the future together. That's what we see as community building. And I hope our webinar series will give us first-hand insight from people that are following closely this matter. So today we start our inaugural episode, which is the discussion between ambassadors, and I'm very happy to introduce them to you. We have two dignitaries in the first part of the discussion, and I'm very happy that they are here with us. Allow me to introduce to you His Excellency Santosh Jha, the Indian ambassador to the EU and to Belgium, Luxembourg, and the European Union, and His Excellency Ugo Astuto, who is the ambassador of the EU to India. Later on, we will also have the Belgian ambassador, His Excellency François Delay, who will be addressing us at the end of the webinar. Also, a warm welcome, Mr. Ambassador from Belgium. I would like to start with a brief background on our two excellencies who will be in the discussion, and I'm going to read it in order not to make mistakes here. Ambassador Santosh Jha, very welcome. You arrived as the ambassador of India to Belgium, Luxembourg, and the European Union recently on July 17th. As ambassador, you have been a very active Indian diplomat with also very relevant exposure to Europe, amongst other geographies. In his roles of serving as the deputy chief in the Indian mission in Brussels, where he was involved closely in negotiations for an India-EU bilateral trade and investment agreement, the very famous BTIA, and also served as chargé d'affaires from January to September 2012. He has also spent his illustrious career in Moscow, Vladivostok, New York, and Colombo, with specific expertise in teams responsible for negotiating economic partnership agreements between countries, nuclear agreements, and the task force of rebuilding India's policy planning division. It is also the Indian Ambassador Jha's first appearance for a business interaction as the Indian Ambassador to the EU with us today. Thank you for that. Ambassador Astuto has 2 decades of rich experience of being a diplomat across countries like Italy, Nairobi, and in London and Brussels. He has assumed various roles in his career, including as alternate director for Italy in the EBRD, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, in the permanent representation in Brussels, and in the embassy in Delhi as deputy head of mission, as director for South and Southeast Asia, and as deputy managing director for Asia and the Pacific at the European External Action Service in Brussels. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And I also want to address the audience. As Malini said in the beginning, please, dear audience, do not hesitate to raise your questions in the question and answer box, and we will take them up after the initial discussion with the excellencies. Let us begin now with the actual webinar. I would like to refer to, and it was already done in the beginning, to the 15th India-EU Summit, which took place virtually on July 15 in the co-chairing by Prime Minister Modi, the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, and the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. A lot of themes were touched upon during that special talk, and I would like to have some opening remarks, thoughts from Ambassador Astuto on this summit. Were there particular things that took your attention? Ambassador, please.
Thank you very much. Well, thanking the organizers, the Port of Antwerp and CII for organizing the event and inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here with you all, and let me specifically recognize my friends and colleagues, Ambassador Jha and Ambassador Delay. It's a particularly propitious moment in EU-India relations, so I think that this seminar is very timely. As you said, we had a summit in July that was virtual, inevitably, due to the COVID situation, but very positive and very focused, I'm happy to say. So a number of priorities were identified by our leaders, ranging from the defense of multilateralism, of the rules-based system of international governance, to connectivity, from climate change to the digital economy. And in the backdrop of the summit, obviously, we had our common engagement against COVID, in order to face the health, the consequences on health, so the protection of the health of our citizens, but also to engage on a discussion about the economic fallout of the crisis of the pandemic. And specifically on trade, let me say that at the very outset that India and the EU have very strong trade ties. The European Union is the first trade partner of India. Our trade exceeds 100 billion euro, and it's a notably even relationship without any major asymmetry, let's say. Also, in terms of investment, the European Union is a principal player in India, and we have seen Indian investment in the European Union increasing in the past few years. However, as you said, if you consider that India is the fifth largest world economy as of today and growing, and the European Union as a bloc is the first economy worldwide, I think it's fair to say that there is more that we can do. In this respect, I would like to recall a very important summit deliverable, which we achieved in July, which is agreement on setting up a high-level dialogue at ministerial level, I mean, on trade and investment. And I'm pretty confident that this new forum, this new dialogue will help in fostering our economic ties broadly, in discussing bilateral matters, but also multilateral matters, because it's a fact that the EU and India also have a common agenda when it comes to fostering a rules-based system of world governance also in trade terms, centered around the World Trade Organization, for instance. Let me also recall that India will be chairing the G20 in 2022. So I think in this respect, the European Union and India as like-minded democracy also have a lot of common ground where we can build together. Looking through the prism of trade and investment issues, it's also worth noting that our cooperation on priority areas such as climate change or the digital economy, research, or other sectoral topics can also contribute directly or indirectly to the strengthening of bilateral trades. For instance, by greening our economic models, which, as you know, is a philosophy underpinning the European Green Deal, whereby we want to change the equation. We don't want to achieve growth at the expense of the protection of the environment. We believe that actually the protection of the environment is a major motor for growth, for creating growth and jobs. The COVID crisis has brought to the fore also the issue of the security of global supply chains. You were mentioning that earlier. And let me also briefly say that I believe that the EU and India can work together as like-minded fellow democracies. And the point is about diversifying the sources, the supply chains, rather than onshoring, so to say. So in short, let me say that this summit has injected further momentum into the EU-India overall strategic partnership. I think we have already started to together with our Indian friends, to work on the follow-up. And I'm hopeful that we can work together and achieve progress towards a green, digital, and resilient future, and further broaden the scope of our partnership with India in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to hear, and I hope I'm right, an optimistic undertone in your voice, that this summit really was able to pinpoint the important issues of these days, and we didn't run away from them. They were all touched upon, and you mentioned them again. I'm very glad about that. So overall, you felt it was a positive summit?
Very much so. I think very dense in contents and very positive in atmosphere.
That's good. They're wonderful. I was extremely excited about some aspects. You already touched upon them, but I'm going to address Ambassador Jha on this one. We saw on the topics of the summit elements like cooperation in the field of pharmaceuticals, which is something that we as Port of Antwerp are really working on, seeing how we can combine in the supply chain and logistics of pharmaceuticals, both air and sea transport. We have developed our own good distribution practices project in the port together with the pharmaceutical industry, so I was excited to read that. Another one that I found extremely interesting, and I hope we can come back on that later in the discussion, was the circular economy, where as Port of Antwerp we have dedicated a specific area of some 225 acres of land only to attract investments in circular economy. So, Ambassador Jha, could we have your thoughts on the action points and items discussed during the summit, please?
Well, many thanks. First of all, good morning to all of you in Belgium, and good afternoon to our colleagues in India. I'd like to thank both the Port of Antwerp and the CII for this opportunity. I'm delighted that I could participate in this forum, which is, as you said, the first one that I am attending since taking over as India's ambassador here. Well, you know, the 15th India-EU summit, in my view, has served to put the accelerator on the India-EU strategic partnership. It has provided guidance and direction to our relationship through the EU-India roadmap for 2025. It outlines a variety of initiatives and reflects on a very, very multidimensional partnership. It is clear from what we see from the substance of the roadmap that the India-EU relations is not just a priority for both sides, but a necessity for the global good. Joint statement that came out also covered a wide range of areas and is a further confirmation of this very multidimensional nature of the relationship. Let me say that, you know, among the more important decisions that took place, there were two broad sets of issues. One was political and strategic in nature, and there, of course, you know, the emphasis on security and defense cooperation, the decision to establish a maritime security dialogue to enhance security cooperation through arrangements between CBI and Europol, to enhance our naval cooperation, to turn it into a more operational sort of an engagement, which is already happening on the ground. It needs to be acknowledged only. So in a sense, you know, and also the, you know, the strengthening of the multilateralism, which is under stress these days, and naturally something that we should be working together on. And then there is this economic sphere of activity, which has always been the focus of India-EU relations. And you rightly mentioned the Declaration on Resource Efficiency and Circular Economy. Let me say that, you know, it is what has made it possible is the number of steps India has taken in recent past. For example, the energy efficiency program of the government has led to installation of 210 million LED bulbs, leading to energy conservation of 20,000 megawatt and saving of US $1.5 billion per year. If you look at the various flagship programs of the government of India, whether it is Clean India, Clean Ganga, whether you now look at FAME India, or the Green Highways policy, the smart cities, or the urban you know, rejuvenation programs, each one of them is based on development of waste recycling, waste management, and waste to energy efforts. There is an underpinning sort of a theme of climate in everything that the Prime Minister does. So I think it is very good that we could work, you know, with you, a statement that would allow us to work with a global leader in this regard. You know, there is, of course, the very, very important trade and investment issue. EU is India's largest trade partner. It is probably no longer the largest trade partner with the BREXIT, but still a leading partner, and it's a very, very important source of both investment and technology. And that itself makes EU so relevant to the Indian, worldview. We are very happy that we were able to agree to, have a trade and investment dialogue at the ministerial level. I think this high-level dialogue is something that we are looking forward to at an early date to provide guidance on how to move forward on these two very, very important issues. If you look at the EU's emphasis on strategic autonomy, that is being talked about a lot more, and India's Atmanirbhar or the Self-Reliant India initiative, I think there are very many natural synergies there. You could create secure and resilient global value chains working together. And I think the ministers may be also discussing this aspect. I would say that, overall, if you look at the summit, it was a highly successful one, not just in outcome, but also in optics, which is very important. The two of the largest democracies working together with shared values and principles. And it creates a certain level of comfort. I mentioned to one of the EU leaders recently that the policy of the EU is to convergence through trade, but India is already convergent, and we can work on areas where we see eye to eye with each other. I think India is presenting itself to the EU as a like-minded, trustworthy, and a reliable partner. And there is naturally, therefore, much to gain and even more to work towards, realizing a world based on our shared vision. And this particular aspect is particularly important given the current stresses and strains that the global, institutions are suffering from. First, because of a certain degree of unilateralism and the changes that are happening, the disruptive forces across the world, but also now further accelerated by the COVID pandemic. So we are very happy with the outcome. I can say that I share completely my views with my colleague from the other side, Ambassador Astuto. So thank you so much for this opportunity once again. I'm ready to take further questions.
Lovely, thank you so much. I think some of the aspects you mentioned will come back in the next questions, because I'm absolutely curious to know also more about the thing like the waste management. How can we work together there? But first, a question perhaps on the summit took place in the middle of COVID, of course, special circumstances. So perhaps Ambassador Astuto, could you update the audience on how Europe in general and European business are reacting to the COVID-19 pandemic? Now, do you see recovery? What do you see happening in the EU? Your microphone is off. Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot.
Okay.
Well, as we all know, the pandemic has a major disruptive impact, not just on our lives, but also on our economies. So the economic outlook in the short term for the EU as for the rest of the world largely depends on the evolution of the pandemic and on the restrictions to economic activity and social activities that need to be put in place to contain the health consequences of the epidemic. Well, based on what I read on the interim forecast published in early July, the euro area was forecast to decline by 8.7% in 2020, the euro area GDP. Assuming that containment measures can be gradually eased, however, we hope that we can get back to growth in 2021 with a forecast of 6.1%. But one should bear in mind that these projections are obviously sensitive to the evolution of the pandemic. We are not yet out of the woods. But again, like the rest of the world, the European economy experienced quite a significant economic contraction in the second quarter of 2020. Now, what we expect is a bounce back in the third quarter of the year, and we also expect from there on an upward trajectory for the EU GDP. On the upside, let me mention here what we have all read in newspapers about, that is that EU heads of state and government have reached a landmark political agreement. In setting the scene for a 1.8 trillion euro package for a sustainable and green recovery. The recovery plan is based on the next generation EU instrument and a reinforced multi-annual financial framework. I think that both next generation EU and the MFF will help the EU not just to recover, but to build back better, as UN Secretary General said, and transform European economies in line with the priorities set in the European Green Deal, and in terms of digital transition and resilience. So I think that this political agreement has further strengthened Europe's prospect for a strong and sustainable recovery. And this gives me a great degree of confidence in the future, because as we know, when Europe is united, it can do wonders.
Thank you so much. We follow you. United, we are strong, and that goes also in the business world and in the trade. So thank you so much. Ambassador Jha, you mentioned self-reliance. I've got a question there because I'm a little bit, and I'm honest here, confused. In what we saw on the supply chains in the COVID period, that a lot of supply chain managers were questioning that they are too dependent perhaps on few suppliers, and mostly China is involved in that case. So we learned from that we need to make sure that there is more multi-sourcing, that supply chain directors set up a variety of sources for purchasing their products, which is opportunities for countries around the world. We in Antwerp, we are absolutely, with the huge capacity of warehouse, we are looking at, instead of, or as on top of just in time, we look a bit at just in case. Build stocks just in case things go wrong, just in case we have a next pandemic or a next event that is unexpected. So we basically concluded that we need even more open economy than we have today, but we need to make it much more transparent, and we might need to look at multi-sourcing. When I heard the Prime Minister in his on his speech on Independence Day, he was mentioning this self-reliant India, but then I also heard words like vocal for local and the Make in India thing. So is that a voice that looks more to domestic market development and less international? Whilst on the other hand, I do hear other prominent Indian people talking about the huge export potential of the country. So I'm a little bit puzzled with the different signals concerning the policy of India towards the world. Your mic is on, you're on silent, sorry.
Yeah, let me say this, that the signal coming out of India is not a mixed one at all. It is one of great clarity. Today, India is one of the most open economies in the world. Over the years, last 6 years, the government has undertaken bold economic reforms, which has made it even more attractive for doing business. And much more is being done as we speak, and more, I can assure you, is in the offing. The sentiment generated is reflected in the growing investment flowing into India, which is by close to $300 billion in the last 6 years, and perhaps more than the last 15 or 20 years put together. It is also reflected in the high ratings that India has with globally reputed agencies in areas like competitiveness, innovation potential, and most importantly, in business condition. Last 5 years, 6 years, the government has taken a number of steps to weed out antiquated legislation, remove unnecessary regulation. The result is visible in India's ranking on the ease of doing business of the World Bank. We have jumped 79 places from, we have reached 63 from a position of 142 in 2015. Now, about the Atmanirbhar initiative, let me clear the air there. It is a program to turn India into a manufacturing nation, which in turn then is more integrated into the global economy. It reflects the desire to build strengths and capabilities to become a contributor to global supply chains. India has demonstrated that it is a trusted partner on vital supply chains. It contributed by supplying medicines and medical equipment to over 150 countries, even while it is suffering from the pandemic. During the summit, also, there was appreciation from the EU side that India had kept open the supply chains in the pharma sector, even during the COVID times. This will be reflected with the vaccine, when the vaccine comes online, as India produces 60% of the world's vaccine. And we are very committed to sharing this with everybody in the world. So it is also, please understand that India's size dictates that we should aspire to become a stronger manufacturing nation than we are. We have an endemic problem of trade deficits, which we need to, resolve as well. One cannot seek to be a global player and not have a strong manufacturing base. We hope that just as we have emerged as the pharmacy of the world, we can contribute in other sectors as well. And so that's the real sense behind it. Look at what the Atmanirbhar initiative is. It is a package of a number of various initiatives that the government has taken as part of the world's largest stimulus program. It seeks to open the domestic market for agriculture. The laws were passed yesterday in the Indian Parliament. It seeks to consolidate and simplify labor laws through a proposed national labor code. We are, putting in a lot of effort to promote the growth of infrastructure and the employment generating MSME sector, the micro, small and medium industry sector. And there is also a new emphasis on the digital economy. We also want to, integrate India more strongly into global supply chains. So therefore, you have to see the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative, the Self-Reliant India initiative, in the light of what we've done in the last 6 years to improve business conditions, to make India more open to business, and build it into an attractive destination for investments. And now, I would also add that India is not alone in making this pitch. I mean, if you look at, we see similar aspirations in the European Union, the US, and other such players like Japan. Greater strategic autonomy and redrawing the global value chains is increasingly becoming a mantra for all countries in the post-pandemic world. So India's effort must be seen in this light. So I would urge you not to get confused. There is a great clarity. We believe in holding the hand of investor and taking him through the ropes. There has been tremendous improvements in the business sentiments within India. And despite the fact that we have had some degree of economic decline in the first quarter, we are very, very much focused on getting it back. People are talking about a V-shaped recovery, and we are committed to building India into a $5 trillion economy sooner than later.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for clarifying my little bit troubled mind. Thank you so much. Ambassador Astuto, perhaps you want to give some reaction on this self-reliance policy, Make in India. How is the EU looking at this, and how can we work together to develop the economy in these pandemic times?
Well, thank you very much. Well, I think that after the COVID crisis, there has been a global reflection, indeed, as Ambassador Jha said, on security and resilience of global supply chains. This has happened in India, and it has happened also in Europe and elsewhere. In a way, it's formal, I guess, since we have faced significant challenges. And the evolving world scenario can present, indeed, also opportunities. The shifting of global supply chains, the diversification of global supply chains, for instance, can open new business opportunities for European companies in India. India can indeed offer an alternative and attractive manufacturing base for a number of reasons. It has a number of positive assets. It will not be alone, let's say, in competing for the shifting global supply chains. There will be a number of competitors in South Asia and Southeast Asia, but it has a number of positive assets, positive to offer. Let me remind, well, it's not just about the dimension of the domestic market, but also Indian entrepreneurial tradition, for instance, and its young and vibrant population. So quite a number of assets to offer. EU companies also look at other issues and considerations, obviously, when looking for their investment decision, a transparent and predictable regulatory framework, for instance, and the ease of doing business. And I think Ambassador Jha has been eloquent in describing the progress made by India also in this field in the past few years. But in short, if you allow me, I will simply repeat a very often quoted line by Hölderlin. Wo aber Gefahr ist, wächst das Rettende auch. So where you have danger, salvation is also close. So indeed, the crisis has opened a number of challenges, but also opportunity. And it's incumbent on us to make these opportunities, to translate these opportunities into concrete deeds. There is a remarkable potential to deepen our trade and investment links in a mutually beneficial manner. And again, the summit, I think, has paved the way, including by establishing this high-level ministerial dialogue. A reinforced dialogue at all levels is appropriate, including when it comes to active advocacy by the EU business community. This can also help. So activities such as this seminar today, I'm sure will also contribute to a better mutual understanding. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. I think there's a lot of untapped potential between the EU and India, which why the summits, as you mentioned, really can create a new momentum of action, also on the business domain. Ambassador Jha, one more question for you on geopolitics. You have been involved in the negotiations for the BTIA. Today we see that we have these tensions between China and Europe, China and the United States. How do you see the role of India in the current geopolitics and specifically towards Europe? Is that going to change because of this geopolitical, difficult situation, or how do you see that?
It's a very good question, actually. I think, if you look at what we have done in the last year or so, we've had the summit. I heard my external affairs minister say that he has traveled to Europe more than he has traveled to any other part of the world. He also mentioned that the Prime Minister has invested significantly in the relationship with the EU. India regards EU as an important pole in the emerging multipolar world. It is one of India's topmost foreign policy priorities. We welcome a very, very strongly growing role of the EU in global affairs. And that has been right from the beginning, but I think you said it right. The current scenario requires a greater, a greater degree of dividend to democracies in dealing with each other, particularly on trade and economic issues. I think with union, as a union sharing values and with convergent interest in a wide variety of areas, we would like the EU to be a stronger and more active global actor, including in our part of the world. Our desire for closer political and strategic ties with the EU is reflected in the 15th India-EU summit outcomes. I think I would not specifically talk about the trade issue specifically because I want the ministers to be doing that. I would not like to prejudge the outcome. I mentioned that we will discuss, of course, trade and investment issues, but also the new issue of supply chain resilience, which is something that India has entered into partnership with Australia and Japan already in a trilateral format. What I can say is that the relationship is very, very important, whether it is trade, investment, or technology, and this is fully recognized in India at the leadership level. In fact, there is hardly an area of human endeavor that India and EU cannot work on, given our common commitments to the global international order. If it's only the knowledge factor about knowing what India is doing more recently and not going by what India was doing earlier could help us in this regard. I would give you the example of climate change. There is very little recognition of India emerging as a global player. India's performance under the personal vision and leadership of the Prime Minister has been rated very highly. A German climate watch, which is a EU-based organization and non-governmental organization, rates India's performance as high. along with UK, India is the only G20 country, the two G20 countries whose performance is rated as very high. India is also raising its ambitions further based on its recent accomplishments. And the government has revised its clean energy target from 175 gigawatt to 228 gigawatt by 2022. So it clearly seems to be that India's commitment is not just keeping what it has committed, but achieving more if possible. And this can become a basis for stronger cooperation on climate between India and EU. And this will require a bit of a flexible approach. We are living a different kind of world. What applied yesterday doesn't apply today. So we would look towards EU for a very, very flexible approach to finance and technology. And then, they have been doing that for some time, but I think more of it is needed. And so I think we can make similar efforts in the areas of migration and mobility. India, as I said, is a source of trusted talent. The value systems are very, very integrated into what the thinking within the EU is. We can work on digital economy, perhaps, and we can help add to the EU's competitiveness and its strengths, because that is something that we think is in our interest as well. So I cannot exaggerate the importance of India-EU relationship. It's just not, it's something that we need to do and work together on. It is also because of the global impact, because of the size and scale of the EU, being the largest economic entity, India being the fifth, seeking to become the third very soon. I think the impact that we can create at a global level is enormous. So I can assure you that we are deeply committed and interested in a stronger India-EU relationship. Geopolitics can change, but these realities will remain.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Astuto, you want to comment on this before I'm going to take a few questions from the audience, because I think they're also, some of them are a bit bold. I hope you apologize to raise them, but perhaps you first want to give a short comment on the last encouraging words of Ambassador Jha. Your mic is off. Okay.
Forgot again. Well, what Ambassador just says is music to my ears. I obviously fully agree. And the fact we also have external circumstances. We also have the crisis which is upon us with COVID. I think it has acted as a sort of an accelerator of already ongoing trends. So there are a number of global challenges with severe impacts on our health, on our lives, on our economies. That require international collaboration, of course, but particularly cooperation between like-minded partners. And that's where I believe the strategic partnership between the EU and India will become crucial and key. Together, we can help in shaping the global agenda in a way which is consonant with our fundamental values and beliefs as fellow democracies.
Thank you so much. I think I have a question for you immediately, Ambassador Astuto. It's a question from Jindal Steel. I'm just reading. We have been constantly exporting value-added steel products to the EU, and last year we exported about $50 million in value. Recently, the EU has restricted steel imports based on volume. We need your help. A bold question, bold statement.
Let me simply say that the European Union is an extremely open trade area, and that any measure we take is in line with our World Trade Organization obligation. It has been so in the past and will continue to be so in the future.
Okay, we'll work on that. And another remark or a question for help from Agility, Mr. Lakaraju. We all know that connectivity is key to growth of trade, and in the past, Belgium and India were connected with direct flights, Brussels Airlines to Mumbai. Currently, we have no connectivity, air connectivity, between both the countries, and would request the ambassadors to look at this aspect. How can you help Agility here?
Well, I think let me take this because Francois is not here, Ambassador of Belgium. But we have discussed this, the two of us, about working together, being partners in trying to build this connectivity. When I was last here in Brussels between 2010-13, we had a direct flight of Jet Airways. Brussels was a hub for the Jet Airways, but that has changed since then, and so we will need to work on this aspect together. I think the COVID has posed particular challenge in this sector, because the airlines and the tourism sectors are amongst the most affected by the COVID. But once this situation stabilizes, I do think that we would be in a position to work towards achieving this common objective with Belgium.
Thank you. Is there any collaboration? I don't know who can take this question, but is there any collaboration planned between India and the EU for education sector? I don't know who could comment on that.
Master, can go ahead.
Yeah. If I may, well, I'll simply, my colleague Santosh will complete, and we will further elaborate. But from my side, I would simply like to underscore that actually we have already significant cooperation in place through our traditional EU programs, such as Horizon or the Marie Curie Sklodowska, and Erasmus Plus for the exchange of students when it comes to Erasmus Plus, and for common research endeavors under Horizon 2020 and exchange of researchers. And actually, I'm happy to say that India is one of our major partners when it comes to each and every of these programs. So there is a quite dynamic and lively collaboration already ongoing, and obviously it's incumbent on us to try to make it even better, and we will, if possible, try to further broaden. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Perhaps a last question, because we want to stick to the time frame that we have set on Brexit. Evidently, a webinar without Brexit would be very strange. So the remark is, how do you see the India-EU post the departure of UK from the EU, being a major trading partner of India? Perhaps short comment from both excellencies. Ambassador Astuto, you want to start? Brexit and EU-India.
Right, yes. Well, I will start. And actually, it's a fact the EU remains the world's largest economy. And it's a leading trade partner and investor in India today. It will remain so. And our partnership with India has been strengthening over the past decades, based on shared values of democracy and Ambassador Jha said earlier, on converging interests, on bilaterally and globally. So based on the outcome of the Leaders Summit and based on the roadmap which has been agreed, the EU-India Strategic Partnership Roadmap to 2025, based on the vast expanse of the topics which are contained in this roadmap, I would say that the strategic partnership between the EU and India will grow even further, irrespective of contingencies here in Europe, let's say.
Thank you.
No, I completely agree with Ambassador Astuto. I think India-EU partnership is important by itself. Of course, let's remember that even within the old European Union, it was Germany which was the largest trade partner of India, if you're talking about member states. So we are, continue to see lots of opportunities in this partnership. I think the recent India-EU summit has confirmed that. The areas that we are wishing to work on are areas which shape many ways not just the lives of our people, which is something that is extremely important. I think the partnership should focus more on it, but at the same time can determine the kind of world we live in. I mean, look at, for example, the task force on artificial intelligence, the emphasis on digital economy, or a dialogue on 5G. All these are extremely important, and EU and India as convergent partners, as like-minded partners, are natural partners in my view. So let's say that we need to, in this change world, begin to continue to give a dividend to democratic partners. I think that is the nature of the world that we are entering into post-pandemic, and I'm sure that our leaders are focused on this in this regard.
Thank you very much. I'm going to thank both of you from the deepest of my heart for sharing your views. You really brought us a very interesting insight. You challenged us. I'm glad we did go beyond the obvious. You really took out of the relationship between EU and India the elements that are important for the future. I really want to thank you. Normally, which I should now hand over a memento to you on a beautiful dice, but unfortunately we can't do this here, but I'm sure we will meet in the near future. But allow me again to thank you, Ambassador Jha, Ambassador Astuto, for a wonderful dialogue we had today on this inaugural episode of our webinar. Thank you so much. Before finally closing, I would love to give the floor to the Belgian ambassador, Mr. Francois Delay, to give us some remarks. Mr. Ambassador, please.
Thank you, and I hope the connection will work. Thank you, Mr. Arnaud. Thank you, Malini, for organizing this webinar. I'm not such a great fan of webinars, but this is an exception, and I think that we'll have to learn to do with this time. First of all, let me tell you how pleased I am to see my great colleague, Ambassador Jha, Ambassador Astuto. Want absolutely to congratulate Ambassador Jha for having recently presented his credentials to His Majesty the King, and so I'm very proud to have him as a representative of his great country in Belgium. Being an ambassador of Belgium in India is sometimes a little bit like being the ambassador, you know, of Antwerp, because there are so many connections between Antwerp and India. Of course, you have the ports and the beautiful picture which you have behind you, which is, I think, perfectly symbolizes, the tradition and the future vision for Antwerp. But of course, we have also diamonds. We have also a very vibrant Indian community in Antwerp. So I'm very proud to be here to represent not only my country, but this great city of Antwerp, who is also the main gateway to Europe. It's not only gateway to Belgium, but it's a gateway to Europe. Not so much to add to what has been said. I must say I completely agree with both my colleagues on everything which they have said, and also on the optimism for the future. I must say, being here, I can feel the pain, for this very terrible year 2020 and the pandemic, but this will go away. And what we see here is the vibrancy of India, is the inevitability of growth of India. So India will continue to grow whatever happens in the short term. And I think this pandemic, also one of the lessons is this pandemic by itself did not happen in a vacuum. It happened at a time where all this globalization model, which we had for like 10 or 20 years, was already put into question. And so I think we should really focus on the world, not so much after COVID-29, but more about a sustainable, and you've mentioned this, a sustainable world which we want to be building together after in the coming years. Because when you see the size of India, India will not be able to grow the way we have been growing. And I don't think that our way of growth was really the best model that there was. And of course, India, we are looking with great attention everything which they have been doing. We should not focus on India, sometime protectionist agenda or whatever we see. What we see on the ground from the government are a number of very bold reforms. And I think these reforms are going to completely change the country in the coming years. And I'm saying this government really dares take a number of measures which are absolutely necessary. I think talking about the future globalization, we should not go for the kind of globalization we had, where basically it was China-centered and was lowest price-centered. So basically exporting, importing as much as possible from the cheapest source possible. I think this is not the way we want to go to India. We want to start trading with India as equal partners. India is a country with a huge industrial base, and which also has a lot to bring to us not only the economic side of it, but also the philosophical, the way they look at the world. And I think this is now really a time which is ripe for having this kind of exchanges. We see that politically, I mean, relations are very good. I mean, this EU-India summit went very well. But I think we should deepen our dialogue into also this kind of aspects of eternal India, let us say. Another aspect which maybe has not been raised, or just briefly, Ambassador Jha mentioned it, I mean, with 5G, so artificial intelligence. This is the future. The future is also a time where maybe for the first time in history, it will be technology-led. We are not deciding about what the future will be. Technology will decide what it will look like. And I think it's important that also between Europe and India, there is a discussion among our leaders as to what kind of world we want to have, so that this world is not only decided by technology, that we make the best use possible of technology, but we are not only led by technology, but also by the choice of democratic countries, because I mean, the greatest democratic countries in the world. And so we have a lot of common ground to build our future dialogue. This was a few words I wanted to add. Want again to thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be able to travel without actually traveling, but I'm still looking forward to the time when it will be again possible to meet physically with colleagues and to really travel. So thank you very much to all of you, Port of Antwerp, dear colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for your inspiring thoughts. And I think we all agree on your very last words. We want to meet again in person, although it works quite well, but we do miss this personal contact and inspiring thoughts between people on network events. But okay, we hope one day it will come back. Thank you very much for being with us today as well and for your wonderful remarks. We are at the end of our webinar. Evidently, I want to thank everybody who contributed to the webinar, our speakers, Ambassador Jha, Ambassador Astuto, Ambassador Delay, thank you very much. Malini, who organized the webinar, also to you, a great word of thanks. It's always a pleasure to see how you are reaching out to the Indian society and connecting Europe with India. Thank you very much for all your efforts, and please do continue. Of course, I also want to thank CII and Mr. Rice for helping us to organize this webinar. And last but not least, I really want to thank the audience. There were a lot of questions. We couldn't take, of course, all of them, but it proves that it has been a concept that works. I really want to thank the audience, and we'll see if we can still get some more answers to the many questions that were raised in the question box and in the chat box. I do invite all of you to join us again on our second webinar, which will take place on October 21. We will have leading Belgian and Indian businessmen around the table there to continue our dialogue. So looking forward to see all of you on October 21 and wish you a great continuation of the day. Thank you so much and see you.